are some seats over here if you want to sit down. Feel free. Just come on in. We're friendly. At first glance, there may not seem to be a lot in here about perspective, but there actually is in these readings today. The Lord is near the end of his life, and he knows that this is rather late in Matthew's gospel. And he's talking about how he's going to be killed. He's using veiled language. And I think you might remember, as I've told you before, people had their idea of what the Son of Man was going to do, and it was to lead their revolution, to get the king back on the throne of an independent kingdom, etc., etc. But Jesus keeps redefining the Son of Man, and he says the Son of Man must suffer. And they keep thinking he's got to be kidding. He's wrong. But he keeps pointing this out, and here is another time he points it out. The heir will be taken outside of the vineyard and killed. The vineyard was an ancient allegorical theme for these people. They understood themselves to be the vineyard of the Lord, the house of Israel. We just sang about it in the psalm. And on the front of the temple, at the time of Jesus, the white marble temple, there were gilded grapevines and leaves on the front of the temple. It must have been a spectacular sight in the morning when the sun was shining directly on the gold and the white marble. Wow. They saw themselves as the fruit, as the vineyard of the Lord, the house of Israel. All of them, not just the important people, but everyone, even the little ones. And this is why the story of Isaiah is so poignant today. You may not be aware of it, but in our translation into English, they're kind of nice. And as Mark emphasized, thank you, Mark, he said the wild grapes. The actual Hebrew word is stinky. Why do these grapes stink? That's what Isaiah originally said. They niced it up a bit in the translation into English. God is disgusted with the yield. It stinks. We say even in modern English. So he's not happy at all with what the produce is going to be. And Jesus is warning them about it and says the kingdom will be taken away from you and given to others. But he also points out that he will be taken outside of the vineyard and killed. He is literally taken outside the city of Jerusalem and slaughtered. He understands at least something of what is coming. And he has to keep redefining what his role is as the Son of Man. The Son of Man must suffer, he said. And even on the night of the betrayal in the garden, Peter is going to defend Jesus with a sword, remember? They don't get it. I don't know how much we get. But I have to tell you, if you're in leadership of any kind in the family or in work or in church or wherever, you're going to suffer, and you better get ready for it. It's not all fun. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's hard. There is suffering involved in leadership. It's not all about glory. So you have to change your perspective and realize that what you do then is you're called into some kind of service rather than into some kind of power struggle or ordering people what to do. You're called into service. It's a different perspective, and you see things differently. We even say this in the canon of the Mass. We say, look not on our sins, but on the faith of your church. Please, God, change your perspective. Don't start with sin. Start with faith. That's what we do as Franciscans in our theology. We don't deny sin, we don't start there. It's a big, big difference because your perspective changes. And we even have that in this new church. If you always sit in the same place, you'll never see some other things. So if you always sit over here, you'll never see the view of the mountain that they can see. But if you always sit over there, you'll never see the view of that window that they can see. And And there are other windows in little corners. You have to get up and look. You have to change your perspective, and then you see things differently, just like in life. You've got to move in order to see more. This was designed specifically this way. It reminds us of our lives, doesn't it? And so the Lord today is telling us through St. Paul, don't be anxious. Stop with your anxiety. And St. Paul did not say, and if you do, everything will always be nice for you and you won't be persecuted. But in the face of that, stop being anxious. And I would say the same to all of us here. In our world today, how easy it is to get anxious. We just had this slaughter in Las Vegas with the man with an arsenal of weapons, right? And if you listen to the news all day long you're hearing about more and more and more and more and repeat and repeat and repeat, and it gets you anxious. Stop. Cool down. Listen to St. Paul. Have no anxiety at all. That's how his letter starts. When your perspective is that you live as a Christian who has committed yourself to Christ, that no matter what happens, nasty or pleasant, you are a child of God. You're loved by God. Why are you anxious about all these things? Change your perspective. Understand that the Lord himself knew where he was headed, to death, an unpleasant death. And yet St. Paul can say, have no anxiety at all. That's the Christian message in a nutshell. We know that we are loved by a God who will make all things well. We can relax into that. That can be our perspective. I'm reminded of the great medieval mystic Julian of Norwich. I encourage you to read about her sometime. But so often in her showings, they were called, her understandings of what God was telling her, she would say, you will see that all manner of things shall be well. All will be well. All will be well. And if you can change your perspective to that as a Christian, looking at our world today, not being foolish or careless, but dealing with these things with that attitude, that different perspective, that we are all caught up in God. All will be well. And we can rest in the peace of Christ, no matter what happens, because I truly believe all will be well. May God give you peace on this Sunday morning.